Django here, and I'm presenting you who are the top 10 players in Age of Mythology Retold right now. This video includes lists of TheMista, RecoN, IamMagic and Boit. The number one reason why I think this is super hype is because we have the upcoming Genesis Retold tournament with $15,000 on the line, and the qualifiers start this weekend. So let's get started. Before I start with the top 10 list from all the players, I want to put a little bit of a disclaimer. It's very hard to judge and very subjective, and it's never going to be fair. I talked to a lot of pro players and experts, and they all told me it's very hard, we don't know yet, we will see. It's just never going to be easy and never going to be fair, so be respectful in the comments, be respectful on Reddit or on Discord if you discuss this topic. And also as a player, if you are not included in this list, don't be pissed. You have plenty of tournaments to show me and prove me wrong. As I mentioned, this can change within the next tournaments, and my idea of this video is to continually making these kinds of top 10 lists and see how the lists change from tournament to tournament. I asked a lot of pro players and experts to make my final list, and I'm trying to make my placing as transparent and as easy to understand as possible. My criteria for the final list were recent tournament performance. This was number one and most important to me. Red Bull Volo Renado and the Underworld Showdown. I only valued AoM Retold performance. I don't care how they played on the Titans or in the Extended Edition. The game is played fundamentally different with no auto queue for military and a lot of new players coming into the scene. God variety was an important criteria, and some players just fall out because of that, because they only play a certain pantheons or certain gods. Ladder performance was not really important and didn't have any factor in my list. And where I got influenced a lot were the pro players and expert lists, and I also looked how certain players placed the player and how often the name got placed and called out, because somebody could only have the name once and all the other players didn't mention that player, so then that person would fall off the list obviously. So let's continue with the top players and casters list. For first, I have the Red Bull Volo winner, TheMista. His list starts with number 10, Grass, continuing with number 9, Tunison, and at number 8, TheMista has Vortex. Now Vortex at number 8 comes a little bit as a surprise to me. If you just look at what Vortex has done in RTS, it's insane. His biography is so long. He is an absolute legend, coming in new to AoM Retold, and already he's dominating. Vortex beat IamMagic, who was considered before the tournament a top 2 player, and he had a strong showing against RecoN. Also, this tournament just happened, the Underworld Showdown. Vortex beat the Soup, Grass and even Pegasus, who I'm gonna talk about a little bit later. So Vortex is a force to be reckoned with in Retold. Continuing Mista's list, at 7 we have Chemo, at 7 we also have Kavov. He wasn't really sure where to place them, so he put them at a 7th spot both. At 6 we have Pegasus. Now Pegasus is an interesting one, because he simply didn't play in Red Bull Volo, so it's so hard to judge where he's actually at. But if we look at the Underworld Showdown performance, he made quick work of count from count, and he beat RecoN 2-0 there. Yes, it wasn't RecoN's best performance, but still beating Red Bull Volo finalist RecoN 2-0 is really strong. And also he took a game of Vortex in the final, and I think it was a really close and competitive series, and some games could have went either way. At 5 we have Matreus, and I marked this with red, not because I think 5 is outrageous, but because it's an interesting topic to talk about. Coming into Red Bull Volo, Matreus was preceded as top 4. And for him, I'm personally sure he's not satisfied with his tournament result. He won against Avely 3-1, and then he lost to Grass 3-1. And I personally think he thought he would get into the finals and have a chance to challenge TheMista for that final spot. At number 4, we have IamMagic, and at number 3, we have El Matador in the Mista's list. Now this again is really interesting to talk about, because Mista played against Matador and beat him 3-0. Mista didn't drop a single game, he also played Chemo, right? But he valued El Matador way higher. And if we talk about El Matador, the guy is an absolute RTS phenom. He has the highest EAPM in RE2, he's brutally good mechanically and strategically. So I think it's not undeserved to put Matador here at 3 for Mista and Magic a little bit lower at 4. He maybe did not perform to the expectations all the people had at Red Bull Vololo. Also in the recent Underworld Showdown, Magic lost 2-1 to RecoN. Continuing Mista's list, at 2 we have the Rappel, and at 1 we have, no surprise, RecoN, Red Bull Vololo finalist. At RecoN's list, at number 10 we have Kawov, at number 9 we have the Frenchman Chemo again, at 8 we have Vortex again, kind of low placement, but both RecoN and TheMista sent their list in before the Underworld Showdown. I think they would rank Vortex higher now. At 7 we have Grass. Again, Grass is kind of a story I want to talk about. He beat Count 2-1. He beat then Rido 3-0 and then obviously Matreus 3-1. So huge achievement for him, and then he battled for the final spot against TheMista. Also in the Underground Showdown he beat Ulysses 2-1 and then lost 2-0 to Vortex, who we already established is an absolute beast. I just want to mention something too. Grass is born in 2008. He has a lot of time to grow and to get better over time. He will be a force to be reckoned with in the future. At number 6, RecoN has IamMagic, and at 5, El Matador again. So also RecoN shows the trend to put Matador over Magic. At 4, we find IamShelty. Now obviously I cannot value practice games. I'm sure RecoN played a lot of practice games with Shelty and he values him really highly. But in Red Bull Vololo, Shelty lost a close set to the Frenchman Chemo with 3-2. At 3 we have the Rappel, at 2 RecoN plays himself, and at 1 we have TheMista. The reason why I marked these 3 players in green is that you will see that a lot in the upcoming list, that those 3 players are stuck at the top of everybody's list. Before we continue the video with IamMagic's list, I want to mention that videos like these take a lot of effort in editing and creation, so consider subscribing and giving the video a thumbs up. Magic puts at number 10 Matreus, followed up by number 9 Orc, and at number 8 he puts Soup. Now yet again this is a rather interesting one, because also Magic played against Soup, and yes he beat him 3-0, but obviously he rated Soup's performance really highly. In the Underground Showdown, Soup was even able to take 1 game off of Vortex. Continuing the list, at 7 we have Kawov, at 6 we have the Frenchman Chemo. Now personally I would have loved to see Chemo in the Underworld Showdown, but we didn't see him there. He took a close set of Shelty and then obviously had a problem. He faced TheMista and lost 3-0. So again, Chemo is a hard one to rate. But Chemo is someone to be known to put in a lot of games in the ladder, and he's very respected among the top players. At 5 we have Pegasus again, who we already talked about. At 4 RecoN, at 3 the Rappel, at 2 Vortex, and now I have to mention IamMagic sent me this list after Underworld Showdown, so obviously he had that in mind as well. That's probably the reason why Vortex is higher in his list. At 1, obviously no surprise, we have TheMista. Continuing with Boit's list, at 10 we find Grass, at 9 we find Tunison. Tunison is also really interesting to talk about, because his Red Bull performance was really strong. He beat Kawov, a guy who we already seen in a lot of the players' lists, and then he took a game off the Rappel, who we already established is among the top 4 players in the game right now. Number 8, Boit has Chemo. At 7 we find Orc. Now Orc also is an interesting one to talk about, because he beat Dowd 2-1 and then he actually took a game of the Rappel in a really close set where Orc almost could have qualified. At 6 we have Pegasus on Boit's list, at 5 IamMagic, at 4 we find Kawov. Placing Kawov at number 4 is not outrageous in my opinion, but if we just look at tournament performance, and this was my main criteria, Kawov went out really early, 2-0 to Tunison. At 3 we have RecoN, at 2 the Rappel, and at 1 TheMista. So yet again those top 3 almost established. The kind of interesting thing on Boit's list is that Vortex is completely missing here. Continuing now, as you can see, I asked a lot of people, and again you will find that the Mista, RecoN and Retold were put at the top by most of them. And then Org didn't want to place a lot of the other players, so I just named them here. Vortex also placed the top 3, putting himself at a, I think, deserved number 4. And then at number 8 he presents us with a new player we haven't talked about yet, and that is Ulysses. Ulysses didn't have a long tournament in Red Bull Rolo, losing 2-0 to Tiger Boss, who actually then had a really close set with Vortex. And also in the underground showdown he lost 2-1 to Grass. At 10, Vortex also brings us a new player in Eric. Eric's Red Bull Rolo performance was strong, but he lost a close set to Aveley 2-1. Continuing with Kovov's list, he put Mista at the top, and then naming all these other players, he wasn't really sure how to put them in which order. Tunison's list also consists of the top 3 we already established. Again, note putting Matador really high on that list. And at number 9 we have Super Afim. Afim also had a strong performance but lost a close set 2-1 to Rido. Afim is really known to be an Egyptian Pantheon player. There we have Grass list, and I really like it. Grass comfortably puts himself at number 4. I absolutely love it. He's young, but he has the confidence and he has the skill to back it up. So shout out to Grass. Now Flames list is kind of the only one that doesn't have that established top 4, valuing Pegasus really highly at 2 and IamMagic at 3. The last person I talked about was Eric, and he also put a clear top 3 here with Mista, RecoN and the Retold. I think it's very easy to put Mista at number 1. I mean, he didn't drop a single game in Red Bull Vololo. What else do we really need to talk about here? I think then we have a clear number 2 to 4, and it's really subjective where you place them. But I personally place RecoN at number 2. Yes, RecoN lost to Pegasus in Underworld Showdown, but in Red Bull Volo he won a really close set 3-2 to the Retold, and he also beat Vortex 4-1. And as I mentioned, these are the 3 players that compete for number 2 to number 4. So in my opinion, RecoN beat both of them, so he has a deserved number 2 spot. At number 3, and this is again very subjective, I will put the Retold. In most of the list, players put him higher than Vortex, and I think the Retold comes out of Age of Mythology, is a slight notch at the moment over Vortex. Also, if you think about it, Vortex himself placed Retold in front of him. At number 4 then, no surprise, Vortex, he's an absolute beast, playing AoM for such a short time. I think in the future he can contest for that top 1 spot with TheMista. Now it's where it really gets hard after that top 4. It's very hard to judge, and we just simply don't have enough tournaments and tournaments results to make a super fair list. I tried to put in all the information we could, and I think there are 4 players that stick out now that compete for number 5 to number 8 spot. And those 4 players are El Matador, IamMagic, Grass and Pegasus. All of those 4 were mentioned a lot in a lot of players' list or had really strong tournament performances. At 5 I will put Pegasus. The reason why I put Pegasus at 5 is because he was mentioned by a lot of players very highly, and he beat RecoN, who was a Red Bull Vololo finalist, 2-0. All the other players that are in the group with Pegasus were not able to beat RecoN 2-0, especially Magic also played RecoN in Underworld Showdown, losing 2-1. At 6 I put El Matador. The reason for that is both RecoN and TheMista, who established number 1 and number 2 players, had Matador over Magic, so I went with the same pattern here, putting El Matador over IamMagic. Again, this is very hard, that both players did not play against each other. I just have to go now off those expert opinion here. At number 8 we have Grass, and this to some people might be even unfair to put Grass at 8, and I'm gonna talk about why. Yes, Grass was in the Red Bull Vololo finals for the LAN event, playing against TheMista, and he beat Matreus 3-1. But in a lot of pro players list, they didn't value Grass that highly yet, so I put him at number 8. Now that we established number 1 to 8, let's continue with the number 9 and 10 spot. I think for number 9 and 10 we have 5 players that are battling for that spot. Chemo, Kvov, Matreus, Tunison and Orc. It's really hard again to rank them, but I went with 9 with Tunison and I'm gonna explain why. First of all, Tunison was mentioned by a lot of players in that top 9 spot, and he beat a direct opponent for that spot in Kvov 2-0, and he was able to take a game of the Rappel as well, who we established as a top 4 player. So I think putting Tunison at 9 makes sense. At 10, I put Chemo. Again, Chemo was mentioned by almost all the players somewhere in the top 10, mostly between the 7th and the 10th spot. So I think putting him at number 10 makes sense. At 11, we have Matreus. We talked about him already. He didn't have the best Red Bull Volo performance, but still is a force to be reckoned with. So I think 11 is a good position for him now. And I think with one strong tournament performance, he catapults himself in the top 4 maybe even. The reason why I put Orc before Kvov is that again Kvov lost the direct match to Tunison, and Orc had a really tough bracket facing the Rappel so early, and again he took one game of him, so I value that very highly. Also the players that ranked Orc ranked him amongst the top 10, so I think it deserved to put Orc over Kvov here in this spot. And then at number 13 I have Kvov. Again, a lot of players put him high in their top 10 list, but I don't have the tournament results to back it up, so therefore Kvov only in number 13. But again, he is another player with one strong tournament, he catapults himself into the top 6, into the top 4 as well. There you have it, this is actually my top 13 Age of Mythology Retold playlist, since I included a little bit more players. I hope you liked it. Stay fly, this is all from me. Django out.